All right, well, good afternoon. It's Carbon County Commissioner Chris Lukasiewicz, and I'm going to be conducting my last edition of Introduction to Carbon County Government, or County Government 101. And it's an opportunity for me to provide an overview of the organizational structure and the services that county government provides, primarily under the administration and control of the Board of Commissioners. Now, it'll take about 45 minutes to get through this presentation. It is being recorded, so it will be available, quote unquote, in perpetuity on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on X. I'm going to move this around a little bit so individuals have an opportunity to see this on different groups and channels around Carbon County. I find it's extremely important to have an educated and informed voter base, individuals who understand the roles and responsibilities of the commissioners, of the services that they help ensure are facilitated or provided to the citizens of Carbon County. If you have any questions, I'm going to have to answer them after the fact. For this particular session, I'm not going to be monitoring the chat. I will be shortly going into a screen share mode, so primarily my slides will be showing, and then there'll just be a small, in the upper right corner, more than likely you'll see just a small a shot of me given the actual presentation. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into it. I'm going to start the screen share right now, and you should see it coming across. And again, this is Understanding County Government. I'm Carbon County Commissioner Chris Lukasiewicz. I want to say thank you for joining me this afternoon, and importantly, I want to hope that all of you had a wonderful Christmas. Say thank you for and please consider joining me here. Please consider joining myself and Scott Pompa on the 28th of December, so tomorrow, Thursday night, as we're going to go ahead and discuss my term in office from 6 January 2020 all the way to really what's going to be December 31st of this year. So again, I just want to give that little plug for Carbon Matters live streaming that's going to take place tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, live streaming first and foremost on the Facebook platform, but I'll be restreaming it elsewhere. So again, let's go ahead and jump into Understanding County Government. Reiterate, since I'm not monitoring the Facebook comment feed, if you have any questions, you can go ahead, put them in the comments section, and I'll get to them tonight. Also, you can always feel free at any time, with the exception of 5:30 to 7:30 nightly, give me a call at 570-503-6780. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First, I want to give a perspective on county government. And what you see before you on the slide are three silos. Some might look at those three silos and perceive or see three simple silos at a farm, or they could represent three silos of excellence, as we might refer to them as. So those silos of excellence might correspond to what I refer to as the branches of county government. Three branches: the judicial branch, those under the Board of Commissioners, and then the row officers, where they provide excellence in service to the residents of Carbon County and others beyond our county borders. At the same time, often when you see silos, It is also reference to a lack of synchronization, coordination, and more specifically, a lack of thorough communications across different entities within an organization. And we're going to talk about that because it does exist to some levels. So let's go ahead and look at the agenda. Here's the agenda I'm going to follow. It's always good to know kind of the path, the way ahead. And this is the areas, about 12 different areas in which I'll be hitting upon throughout the next 45 minutes or so. There are some myths about the Board of Commissioners and county government. And first and foremost, probably the biggest myth is, county commissioners run the county. I assure you, county commissioners don't run the county. Commissioners run county government. That is, county commissioners administer and manage the departments directly under them, which is 21, and they provide resources to ensure that the row offices and the courts are able to provide services also. So again, we don't run the county, we run county government. Specifically, we administer, manage, and enable through resourcing services to the public. And the public, an issue always is, and part of the base foundational reason for this particular presentation is I've learned that even myself, going back to 2014, didn't sufficiently know much about my county and specifically county government. In school, right? Well, we had social studies and civics may have been a smaller or minor role in that, even though I don't recall it in my elementary, middle, or high school years. We never focused on at all, never learned about borough or municipality government or county government. Yet these are the levels that are closest to residents, right? We know the individuals for more often than not who represent us, and we know them at a personal level. So what I have prepared, and you can feel free to go ahead and check it out at your leisure. I've provided this before, and it's also a quiz I give when I do my onboarding presentations of County Government 101, right? It's a small quiz that helps gauge one's knowledge of the county and specifically county government. And it helps reinforce the fact that we know too little about the closest level of politics to us and that most impacts us on a daily basis. You can see the URL. That URL is actually what's called a tiny URL. So it's a shortened version of a hyperlink that goes to a public accessible Google Drive folder that I have, in which resides this particular quiz. So feel free to take it. You can print it out, take it online. Again, just help gauge what you think you know about county government. So what are the resources or references I used other than personal experience to prepare for this presentation? Well, the Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania. There is a manual that has been developed for county commissioners. I use the Citizen's Guide for Local Government. Importantly, the County Code, which is really, for all intent and purposes, the Bible for commissioners in 60 of 67 counties. And I also use DCED's most recent version of its guide for home rule, of which 7 of 67 counties in Pennsylvania are. So let's kind of get a little bit of context about Carbon County. And this is really broad brush stroke. Carbon County is one of 67 counties throughout the Commonwealth. And I think, as many of us may be familiar with, back centuries ago, this was really a pathway for Indians of the Delaware tribe, or the Lenni-Lenape Indians, who traversed and traveled through this area. Importantly, 1791, right? This is Carbon County. No doubts that we tie our name back to the discovery of anthracite coal up in Summerhill by Kinter in 1791. And it's not necessarily that anthracite coal was an unknown element at the time, but rather, I would argue, the fact that Kinter learned how it was such a high BTU producing element, and that really brought the importance of anthracite coal into what would be its dawn. Carbon County, originally founded in 1843, it was derived by two neighboring counties, Northampton and Monroe, which are currently to our east and southeast right now. Approximately 400 square miles, about 18 or 19 miles of that is waterways, be it lakes, ponds, rivers, streams. Obviously, about 382 miles is land. Much of it, which is in a beautiful natural state. But again, we must always continue to protect what remains of that and balance the beautiful natural beauty we have with economic development and economic strength of the county. We did see a slight decrease in the 10-year decennial census here in Carbon County, but we're right around 65,000. Projections out to 2030 are showing slight continuing decreases here in Carbon County. Unemployment, just about 2 percentage points higher than the Commonwealth itself, which is at 3.6. We're at 3.4. Per capita income, about $5,000 lower. I was looking at the top employers for quarter two of 2023. At least that was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Those were the most recent numbers out there. You'll see the 2 hospitals are listed there: Blue Mountain Resort, Walmart. But look at the number of government-related entities: Carbon County government, state government. You start thinking of the Social Assistance Office, PennDOT. It's surprising that state government is so high up there. But then you see Lehighton Area School District, Palmerton Area School District. Interesting about the school districts and Carbon County and state government is that they're recession-proof employment, right? Even if the economy starts to tank, it's more than likely individuals are not going to lose jobs. However, the hospital, St. Luke's LVHN, can downsize. Behavioral Health Associates, BHA, right? Again, if they're under pressures. Blue Ridge Cable, another example, right? Who's during depressive times of economic challenges may resort to layoffs. Over on the right-hand side, you can see Carbon County and its 5 neighbors. I will mention that Lehigh, Luzerne, and Northampton are home rule counties. So basically, they have their own constitution, which guides their form of county government. So they don't have to adhere to the county code, as do we here in Carbon County, Schuylkill, Luzerne. So let's go ahead we often hear a terminology used, county classifications or classes of counties in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, counties are classified by size. For example, Carbon County is a 6th class county, and us, along with 23 other counties, fit the quantity or population size to be classified as such. That's between 45,000 to 95,000 would fit into that 6th class category. And you can see you go all the way up. The lower the number, the higher the class. 1st class county like Philadelphia, 2nd class Allegheny County, that would be out around, which would include Pittsburgh. Looking at, you actually have a 3rd class, our neighbors, Lehigh, Luzerne, Northampton, and 4th class, Monroe and Schuylkill. So you see our 5 neighbors are all higher classification, right? Higher populations of 145 and greater, up to 500,000. And why is that important? Because it is an indicator of not simply the population, but can be an indication of the tax base or the possible tax base. So the revenue that can be generated by property taxes by the counties, the municipality, or the school districts, the 3 taxing authorities here in Pennsylvania. So again, Carbon County is a 6th class county. At times you might hear we're a 6th class county with 4th class county issues. All right, so let's say maybe crime rates as high as Monroe or Schuylkill might be an example, and one you most hear. So what compromises, other than 382 square miles of physical space, Carbon County, what makes it up or composes the government entities? Well, that would be the 23 municipalities. And those municipalities are broken down between boroughs and townships. With 12 boroughs, 11 townships. What often distinguishes them, or does for sure, are the number of members that you would see on borough council compared to townships. I'm accustomed to seeing 5 and 3 supervisors on townships, but normally 7 council members on boroughs. And then school districts are actually seem to be a higher number of elected officials. I think what is interesting about Carbon County and its 23 municipalities, there are kind of these, let's call them sub-regions, right? Like Kidder Township and Penn Forest, right? That's an area largely made up of transplants to the area, right? Individuals who have relocated from other areas, right? Then you have, what I refer to as the northern tier, that Banks, Beaver Meadow, Luzanne, Weatherly, Packer, and Lehigh Township. And they tend to have an association with the Hazleton area. One, because, some students, Banks Township folks do attend Hazleton High School, but again, it's the commercial center in closest proximity to them. Then you have kind of let's call the coal belt of Nesquehoning, Lansford, and Summit Hill. And each of these areas do have their own unique characteristics. And then if you think, I think of Mahoning and East Penn as kind of more rural and areas, and I associate them with farming, open spaces. And then you go down into, kind of the Bowmanstown, Perryville, Palmerton area, Tollemensing, Lower Tollemensing, Tollemensing Township. I tend to see an association with the Lehigh Valley. Again, this is just a rough breakdown. And then, of course, you have that Jim Thorpe, Lehigh, boroughs, which each of them are unique in their own way. So let me give you a perception, kind of go back to the silo analogy, right? So this is county government according to me. How I think it should be, what I would refer to doctrinally. So that's the way I'd like to see it. In the absence of outside influence, how should county government actually operate? Well, commissioners should be setting the vision, right? They're at the strategic level, right? They're up here setting the vision for the county. Where are we? Where do we want to go in X amount of time? What are the resources we need to get there, right? So now that we have this vision or this strategy, we communicate it down to the operational level. So these would be like the department heads, the row officers, right? So they're at the operational level. They're going to interpret that vision and strategy and then provide the direction to the staff, to the caseworkers, to the employees who are really down in the trenches, right? At the tactical level, who are doing the day-to-day grind, making it happen. And at these three levels, they're nested, right? They're synchronized, coordinated, right? Bringing services in an effective, efficient manner to the residents primarily of Carbon County. Now, if you look over at the three silos, again, silos of excellence, maybe silos of not so much excellence, or we can do better. But it's like the three branches of government. Now, bear in mind, right, at the federal and state level, you have the executive, the legislative, and judicial. In a county code form of government, the Board of Commissioners serves as both the legislative and the executive branches. So it takes away some of the checks and balances that are associated with government at the state and federal level. Next, you have the row officers. And while the row officers and the commissioners and courts are all recognized in the county code, there are certain pullouts or authorities and responsibilities that are unique to each. And you'll often hear row officers or associated with row offices 1620 rights. That is those elected officials who have hire, fire, and manage authorities, right? So the Board of Commissioners doesn't hire or fire those employees. We don't run the day-to-day operations of those particular offices. So that's kind of a carve out of authorities and responsibilities. And that's why the commissioners, like I said, we administer and manage, but within the limitations of our authorities and responsibilities as outlined in the county codes. And when we're talking about the row offices, we're talking the Register of Deeds, Register of Wills, Clerk of Courts, Prothonotary, District Attorney, Coroner, etc. And then finally, you have the courts, which has a notable level of independence to include those 1620 like rights. So the hire, fire, and manage. And it's understandable why there is a separation in the different branches. Now, again, the commissioners are responsible for providing the resources so the row offices and the courts can do their functions. This does create some challenges, the 1620 rights and interpretation of those rights. So commissioners may have a policy that says all county employees who are male must wear ties unless by exception, for example, maintenance workers, for example, right? Well, a row officer might claim, well, that impacts my 1620 rights. Therefore, the gentlemen in my offices don't have to wear ties. That's the most basic level. So it's difficult to have across the board policies that can be enforced across the board. But what the commissioners have that they can leverage to persuade, convince, alignment with policies and procedures. The Board of Commissioners control the budget, the only entity within county government that can approve a budget. The Board of Commissioners must sign each and every contract that comes out of county government, be it from the courts, row offices, or the departments that are under the Board of Commissioners. So again, the Board of Commissioners, if at least two of them are in agreement, can leverage one of those particular authorities to help ensure there is compliance with policies and procedures. But again, Board of Commissioners, it's a 3-member board. You need at least 2 who are in agreement. And I'll give you a perfect example. A year ago, last August, the Board of Commissioners, at least 2 of us, utilized the budget approval process or authority to prevent what I would say was an attempted usurping of our budgetary and taxation authority. Commissioners are the only ones who can raise taxes, meaning create additional taxes or approve the expenditure of those resources. But let's jump into that a little bit more a little bit later. And I'm talking really about the organizational structure so you can better understand that. Let's talk a little bit about the services that county government provides. So while the Board of Commissioners doesn't run county government, we do help ensure that the services we're required to provide by law are done in an effective and efficient manner. And while the lowest level of government, the municipal level of government, probably has the seemingly most direct impact on citizens' lives, literally, county employees in our services have thousands upon thousands of touch points every day with citizens of Carbon County through the services we provide. Some of them daily services, some of them are kind of temporal in fashion. For example, right? Don't necessarily have major engagements with citizens every single day in elections, but come election season, absolutely, right? We probably contact or have some type of contact with 60% of them, but folks are registering, changing parties all the time. Emergency management, you're calling 911, you're talking to county dispatchers. Tax assessment, tax claim, right? Every property owner in the spring is receiving a tax bill, a tax duplicate from the county, right? And then again, you'll see that from the school districts in August. And then planning development, the Planning and Development Commission, for example, Planning and Development Board, right? Impacts planning. The courts, corrections, clearly are impacting citizens on a daily basis. Carbon Transit, right, which is our public transportation system here in Carbon County. And then you look at our human services, our Agency on Aging, our Children and Youth Services, our Veterans Affairs Office, touching literally those alone, hundreds of citizens every single day. So we have a notable impact on the quality of life and the day-to-day activities of citizens through the services that county government provides. Well, let's dive into kind of what's the backbone of the service providing? Well, that's the organization. So let's look at the organizational structure. The numbers I mentioned are ballpark figures. They truly change on a daily basis. But first and foremost, up top, right, we have the voters. The voters up here obviously are who all elected officials ultimately answer to. And that's why it's so important that we as voters are well informed, so we can make good decisions on those individuals who we are going to charge with providing services to the residents of Carbon County. So in the hierarchy, right, in the chain of command, there is no higher authority when it comes to county government than the voters themselves. Directly reporting to them are not only the Board of Commissioners, but the row offices and even the courts every 10 years, right? The judges come up for an opportunity to continue their service. But let's jump over to the row offices first and foremost. Here they are. You can see the 9 offices, co-equals in that they, like the commissioners, are elected for a 4-year term. There's about 90 personnel out of the totality of about 400 county employees who work within the row offices. And you can see civil proceedings, Brathanatary Clerk of Courts does criminal. The controller is really the principal auditing body or entity in the county. The coroner and his deputies responsible. I would mention the coroner's duties and responsibilities. We don't have a medical examiner here in the county. We don't do autopsies. Those are contracted out. All right. Then you have the district attorney. All right. The recorder of deeds. Recorder of deeds. And whenever you're going to manage, work on a mortgage, right? Title researchers are in there checking the property records to ensure there's no liens or disputes or irregularities with the property you might be purchasing. The Register of Wills and Orphan Courts, marriage license, wills. The sheriff, again, this is in Texas, this is in Arizona, this is in Florida, right? The sheriffs and their deputies are officers of the courts. So they're not going down, they're basically serving warrants, right? They're not pulling you over for speeding. They're not doing a SWAT raid, right? That's the municipal police departments and the state police in Pennsylvania. And then finally, the treasurer, right? He's paying the bills, depositing, ensuring the money is deposited, ensure the checks are going out and bills are being paid. Then let's jump to the judicial side, about 72 individuals within the courts. The Court of Common Pleas, Carbon County Court of Common Pleas, right? You have court administration, and then offices specific to the courts. You have the district justices, right? The magistrates, such as Palmerton, Weatherly, Lansford, and in Jim Thorpe. You have domestic relations, probation, both adult and juvenile, small law library, and then they have a separate IT section versus having a combined IT for both all of county government. And I think that's a big inefficiency in what I will describe as county government. The fact that we have two IT departments. So let's talk about the offices under the Board of Commissioners and personnel. First and foremost, under the Board of Commissioners is the chief clerk. This is an appointed position, right? I would like to argue merit-based position. And this individual is like the chief of staff, right? He or she synchronizes, coordinates all the communications in county government. They're the primary medium at which the Board of Commissioners can get messages and information out to everyone in county government. So you always need a focal point of which information flows in, flows out, and someone is tracking everything that has taken place under the auspices of the commissioners or their authorities and responsibilities. And that's the chief clerk. And working with her to help, and also with the commissioners, I'd like to show the solicitor working with, by, with, and through the chief clerk, but also in direct support of the commissioners. Also falling under the commissioners, but falling somewhat in the realm of the judicial because of their duties and responsibilities. You have the public defender and the prison. Now, you have the district attorney over here as the row offices. One might argue that, this public defender is kind of the other side of the coin. The DA prosecuting, the public defender defending those who don't have the private or personal resources to be represented by counsel. So under the Board of Commissioners, right, we have the Public Defender's Office and the prison up on the Broad Mountain. So I'm going to try to break down the other entities that make up the departments under the Board of Commissioners, kind of pseudo categories. And the category might be they don't fit anywhere else, right? We have our own IT section. Then we have archives over on 4th Street in Jim Thorpe. So all the documentation that is created and is required by law to be archived, be it digitized or on microfiche, microfilm, that goes over to archives and they process that. Looking at some of the human services side, we have our Agency on Aging, Children and Youth. And then I put over here human resources, which is really internally focused, right? Whereas children and youth and aging are looking out at citizens. Human resources, and I should probably redo this little area here. Human resources is focused internally on employees, with the exception of, I would argue, for its outward facing towards the public when it comes to the hiring process. And then falling also in the human services with aging and children, youth, is our Veterans Affairs Office, who is the bridge between veterans or their family members, spouses, widows, perhaps widowers, and the benefits that veterans have earned. We have about 6,000, just under 6,000 veterans in Carbon County. Then we have our tax assessment. So they go out, you'll see them in their vests and in their county car out assessing properties to help determine the rate at which, or the value at which is used to determine the amount of taxes they will pay. This information, of course, is provided to the school districts and municipalities also. Then you have tax claim, and you'll often see, right, that's a collection of the taxes. And then also the sales that take place for properties that have not paid their taxes. All right, so it differentiates between a sheriff's sale, right, which are more foreclosures versus a tax sale. And then supporting the tax assessment and tax assessment GIS mapping. But again, GIS mapping also has a lot of touch points, surveyors, title searchers, citizens trying to determine exactly, where their property lies in relations to other properties, things of that nature. Businesses looking to relocate into the area. Then up on the Broad Mountain, we have our emergency management department, who does the emergency management planning and response in the county, and then our 911 or the comm center. We have the election bureau. Election Bureau, again, primarily responsible for the transparent running of elections. We have, the primary and the general every year. Every other year would be the primary elections that we held, such as this current this past primary and general election that just concluded in November. More internally facing, somewhat, supporting the departments. The row offices and the courts are purchasing department, so they're going out doing the purchasing, working contracts to support the services that county government provides. Building and grounds, working primarily the maintenance, call it the maintenance. Then planning, development, zoning, community development, block grant program, things of that nature. Then the catch-all, have the animal shelter up on the Broad. Our parking staff manages our parking areas here in the county seat. And then finally, Mock-Chunk Lake Park. Now, Mock-Chunk Lake Park is not owned by the county. It's actually state-owned, but leased to the county for administering and management of outdoor recreational activities. All right, let's talk a little bit. So that's the organizational structure. And I mentioned there was about 400 employees. Let's see, there it is. So, and again, these are rough figures, they're changing all the time. I have about 300 full-time employees, 100 or so part-time seasonal employees. Seasonal employees, a lot out at Mock-Chunk Lake Park, You have about 11 lifeguards. You have seasonal rangers. You have seasonal maintenance individuals. And then in some offices, you have part-time versus full-time employees. Right now, we're about between 140 and 150 union members, or forming a union members. It was probably about 120 or so up until recently, when 2 additional groups decided they wanted to enter the union. So now we'll have actually 7 collective bargaining units. So 4 collective bargaining units, 2 forming collective bargaining units, and then the prison sergeant's memorandum of agreement, which basically says the county will treat the sergeant similar to the union members at the prison. So National Corrections Employees Union, if I recall the acronym correctly, about 50 or so. Then you'll have 4 AFSCME, American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, There's the existing professional and court appointed, the residual, and then you have forming 1 and forming 2, as I referred to it. One has about 7, the other 15 members. And then also there is the Sheriff's Association, which is another collective bargaining unit. Let's talk a little bit about the Office of the County Commissioner, As I mentioned, the county code is the Bible that gives us our authorities and outlines the responsibilities of the commissioner. Also talks about the row offices, of course. It is in county code governed counties, 3-member board. right? And it is the chief governing body of the county. Remember, unlike the state or federal level or home rule counties, the Board of Commissioners is both the executive and the legislative branches of government combined, right? And we have selective policy making authority, right? And it's really focused on providing services on a county-wide basis. Right. So our admin powers, right, overseeing the various departments, appointment of county personnel, and then fiscal management. Like I talked about with the rows and the courts, it's about providing the resources so they can carry out the services they are charged with. Real quickly, let's talk about the legislative powers of the commissioners. All right, motions, right? And you see motions, right? And that's really it's a tool, parliamentary procedure tool used to put before the commissioners an issue or an action, right? And you see that every Thursday at 10:30, specifically the most recurring meeting that we have, about 50 times a year out of 52 weeks. You'll see motions put forth to pay a bill, to allow placement of a banner, to sign contracts for services, things of that nature. Regulations, you really don't see us using regulations, but rather policies used to really for internal administration or affairs, policies. And we do have a policy book for the county. We do resolutions on a regular basis, and these are official policy statements or positions. Regular ones we do tend to be more focused resolutions on things like honoring an Eagle Scout, citizens' accomplishments. But of course, there are other resolutions that might be put forth, such as a resolution for taxation, if taxes are going to change, or to reaffirm the existing tax levy of the county. And then you have ordinances, parking ordinance, right? You park illegally in a county parking spot, you will be fined X number of dollars, as an example. But the Board of Commissioners aren't simply administering and managing county government in kind of one specific area, because we have boards and authorities of which are internal and external, and that we're seated on, right? Of course, we're on the Board of Commissioners, the three of us, but we always also make up 3 of the 4 standing members of the salary board. The additional standing member, is the controller. And then when either the row offices or the court have a motion on the table, then they become a 5th member simply for that particular vote. So if they want to increase, let's say the prothonotary wants to seek a merit-based increase for one of her employees, for that particular motion that's made, she'll make it. It will or will not get seconded, and if seconded, it will go to a vote, and she'll be one of 5. So temporarily, she will join the salary board, right? We also have the retirement board, which is the 3 commissioners, the controller, and the treasurer. So they help determine the policy that guides the investment of retirement funds. Right now, we're in about the $85–90 million in our retirement. About $500,000 each month is paid in distributions to retirees. And I believe the number is about 400 retirees right now in the county. The Railroad Commission is 5 positions. You have 3 commissioners, you have a representative of Lansford, and then a 5th is supposed to be someone along the county rail line, a company representative along the county rail line that utilizes the railroad. Well, the county has sold its railroad. So while the commission still stands, primarily we're keeping it in place because for the next 6 years or so, we might be down to about 5 years or so, we'll be continuing to receive residual payments from the sale of the county railroad, which was sold for $3 million in cash, 1.7 in-kind infrastructure improvements. But again, the remainder of the cash payment will be paid over a number of years. So the Railroad Commission remains standing until such time as that contractual agreement, sale agreement, is complete. The prison board, the 3 commissioners join the district attorney, the sheriff, the president judge, and the controller as the prison board. And then finally, all 3 of us are on the election board, with the exception of years for which you're running for re-election, and then you name or put forth a temporary replacement on the board. So like Rocky and Wayne this year, they each had the opportunity to nominate a person to the president judge, who said, yeah, I myself, not having decided not to run for re-election, I stayed on the election board. So those are the internal boards that we formally sit on and we have a vote. So again, if the 3 of us stick together, we can be influential beyond the most day-to-day activities, right? So we can shape, the salaries. We can help influence our retirement, how the prison is operated and managed, right, through the prison board. There are a series of external boards or commissions that we sit on from Carbon Monroe Pike. This is 3 counties that work together for mental health developmental services. It's the Joinder Board, right? There's an advisory board that I sit on for the Joinder Board. The Shepherd House Food Pantry, the Conservation District, the LEPC, and the Council of Governments, right? Are all boards on which a commissioner is an active voting member too. All right, let's look at the 2024 budget because that did just get approved, the 2024 budget. So again, I talked about the county providing resources, right? So the primary resource we provide to the rows and the courts and the departments are their funding, right? We work our fiscal year coincides with the calendar year. Now that does provide some challenges because different entities have different budget years. Federal government, all right, 1 October through 30 September. State, right, the end of June, right? June basically, is starting their budget year. So all of them is different. The 3 budget years are different, right? And so is then the taxation doesn't correspond with the budget year either, right? Because when do we put out taxes, right? Early spring, right? May, you're getting tax duplicates from the county and municipality. Then around August, you're getting the school district. So all these different fiscal years, and when the tax bills go out, create challenges to a good budget process. So this year, budget's about $72 million total. The millage rate, no change at the county level. You have this should be 2.575. All right, yep. Right. Oh, I see. Okay. So we're paying both debt and property tax. I need to change that number there. So that $72 million is broken down of an operating fund of just over $59 million. And as part of that is an $800,000 contingency. That'll cover any salary changes that may take place at the annual salary board on the first Tuesday in January. It's the first Monday, unless it's a holiday, then it moves to Tuesday. And also any emergent needs that come up throughout the year. Capital projects, about 4.4 million. That's about $1 million underfunded, not necessarily for this year, but capital projects are really at about $5.5 million. But that additional million won't be needed till 2025. So that's not why, that is why it's not reflected there. And then you have the special fund. That tends to be a lot of grant money, state money, federal money that is coming in. It could include things such as American Rescue Plan money that we had received and haven't yet expended. Things of that nature. Another example, emergency rental assistance program would be revenue coming in under the special fund. So just some big ticket items. You see that revenue and expenditures, salary, $18.5 million, add 35% plus on top of that, 8 million or so for benefits. The cost of employees beyond their salary could include, paying Social Security, the 5% retirement contribution. So in the county, it's a defined benefit plan. Each county employee must contribute 5% of their salary into the retirement plan. The retirement board sets an annual return on that fund, which is, we have to set it between 4 and 5.5%. A return rate is currently 5.5%. So we take all those funds and we invest those to continue to grow the retirement fund to support those 400 or so retirees. So this year, taxes, county revenue, it's bringing in just under $20 million. You're going to see parking revenue is going to bring in really just under 1.1 million. We also have a significant amount of hotel tax that comes in. However, the majority of that goes back out to, there's a contractual agreement with our tourism promotion agency, PMVB. So coming back to the county, while there is a small admin fee of a couple percentage points, I believe it's 4%, 3 or 4% of an admin fee that we keep of, let's say, $1.6 million, but also of the first $500,000, the county comes back 20%. Then over $500,000, the county gets 10% of that, and that's based on, the quarterly distributions that are made. And normally, you'll see the majority of that money is going to support Mock Chunk Lake Park and the operations of that park, tourist promotion, things at the county level. Some big ticket items: prison, $7.7 million, sheriff, 1.6, courts, 1.5, Veterans Affairs, I don't know, about $160,000. Isn't that something? We got 6,000 veterans. That office gets about $160,000. We average about 150 or so prisoners. They get about what, $7.7 million. But over the year, you probably have about 2,000 prisoners that come in and go. So that revolving door, they come in, and so again, the disparity isn't so bad when you look at it that way. All right. Oh, I did want to make out when it comes to taxes that are there. Why that 12.25? 30. Yeah, 12.25. I don't know where the 7.5 came from. I'm looking over my shoulder just to make sure I had something written on the board in regards to 12.25. I want to mention the open space bond issue that was passed a year ago in November. The county has committed $1 million of that already to ag land preservation. There'll be, expect this year, the Open Space Advisory Board will be at the point where they'll be nominating properties for that program. So we can expect an increase in taxes alone for that particular program. And either probably in 2025 budget, you're going to see a necessary tax increase just to keep up with inflation. Also, we did flatten out our carryover. Normally we were carrying over, I don't know, $5-8 million a year, right? So for the past 4 years, 2021, 22, 23, and 24, Rocky and I felt no tax increase was necessary. Let's draw down our carryover from the previous year, and we have done that. Wayne has always been fighting for consistent tax increases, but we are reaching the point where, again, some type of tax increase will have to take place to bolster the general fund, and I would say 2025. The challenge here is in Carbon County is our tax base just isn't growing. It's growing very slowly, not even to the rate at which the additional revenue is keeping up anywhere close to the inflation rate. All right. So that was it. That's County Government 101. I will tell you, if you had that quiz that I mentioned at the beginning, if you would go ahead and go back and look over that right now, you would see that the majority of questions that were asked could be answered simply by having attended or listened to, watched this particular presentation. I'll tell you, I change it every time I give it. I do like it live much better because then you have an interaction with people asking questions as you present it, and can go into a lot more details in regards to how the commissioners interact with the row officers, the Court of Common Pleas, and our departments. You can talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the county code compared to home rule counties, which have their own guide, their own constitution, right, which often is referred to as their home rule charter. I do, in parting here, I want to wish everyone a wonderful new year. At the same time, I want to remind each and every one of you who is interested in county government. Immediate past president of Jim Thorpe Area School District, Scott Pompa, is going to be interviewing me Thursday night at 8 o'clock, facebook.com/C4 Commissioner, right? So my C4 Commissioner Facebook page. So if you want to get a sense of my perspective on county government over the past 4 years, consider joining us as we have that discussion. So I kind of turned the tables here, right? So for the past almost 5 years now, I think it'll be 5 years in January, when I first launched Carbon Matters live streaming, I'm going to be the interviewee. I'm going to let Scott take the helm and lead the interview. So again, in parting, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you so much for your interest in county government and wanting to be a better informed citizen. You can always reach out to me at 570-503-6780, 22 hours a day. The only off-limit time is 5:30 to 7:30 daily. And I'm going to leave you with this quick uh, promotion for Carbon Matters live streaming. Have a happy new year.
I've been fooling myself too long. I never liked to always gone. Goodbye, see you so long. You know, you never let me think that gone. You never let me see that strong. Goodbye, see you so long. We want the cold wind blowing on the night evenings. The leaves smell from the trees. You made a lot of promises I ain't kept to pray, so I am free. No, none of us is gonna die. We will eat the first die. Oh, we can decide.